Happy Monday, degenerates. Welcome back to the DieHard Fuzzy podcast. What the hell is going on with this camera? You take a day off and this thing doesn't know what to do with itself. Damn. All right. Well, hopefully I can get these technical issues sorted out. I looked crystal clean backstage right before we started the show, and now I'm looking like a mess here. What the hell? Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. I'm going to have to shut. There it goes. All right. We're good. Nobody move. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Coming off of UFC 305. Little column A, little column B. Obviously, we're not wearing the baby blues. Didn't come away with the win, which is embarrassing considering I hit a max bet cashing the dog of the week on my guy Dricus Duplessis. Told everybody who would listen my boy was going to go ahead and keep that title wrapped around his waist. I made a couple mistakes last week, guys. I made a couple mistakes. First and foremost, the biggest mistake that I made was playing PFL. I have got to stop betting the PFL. I can't for the life of me figure that league out, and it just burns me. And even worse, you guys know I'm a true degenerate because I decided last second to lock in a bunch of PFL action. I was driving to Vegas. I couldn't even watch the fights. Like, why did I bet PFL this week? And to top it all off, I reverse swept on PFL. So it's like, I was not confident. I shouldn't have been betting on it. I'm literally not even watching. I'm driving to Vegas. It always a perfect storm for me to just go, you know what? Don't need PFL this week. But instead, I gave away piles of cash. So I broke about even in the UFC, like minus less than a half unit. But the big L came from PFL this week, which is very frustrating. And then even in the UFC, the split decision loss with Joshua Kalibau, my God. My guy still cannot be submitted, does everything I want him to. And then he's spinning in the middle of the cage instead of moving forward and doing damage. I could not be more disappointed with Joshua Kalibau giving that fight away. And then, yes, the Tai Tuivasa pick aged incredibly poorly. Apparently, he's just dust at this point. I mean, he put some stuff out there that he was like, I gave it my all. I tried my hardest. And I made the bet truly believing that he was bringing everything he had into this fight. He just don't got it anymore. Everything he had was next to nothing once the cage door closed. I hate to say it, you guys, but Tai is like shot to bits. It's over. It's done. He wanted nothing to do with that fight. Every time he got touched, he backed off. Like if he could get in there, bite down on the mouthpiece and swing, I'll bet you he beats Jairzinho Rosenstrike. But this version of Tai, who doesn't want to get hit, that guy ain't going to win these fights, unfortunately. So big time bummer there. You know what I've decided, you guys? I've decided I'm a spork. I am somehow the sharpest and dullest sports bettor you have ever met in your life at the same fucking time. I made some incredibly sharp bets this week. Casey O'Neill, Dricus Duplessis, called everybody out on those and wasn't hearing nothing to the contrary, beat the market moves, felt like $1 million, and then gave it away on guys like Steve Erceg and Tai Tuivasa. I mean, the game plan came together with the live bet on Dan Hooker. I wish I'd had the balls to play it pre-flop when he was like plus 260. That actually would have saved my night as well. But we got in live at even money, as was the plan. That made sense. I got the absolute lowest price tag on Steve Erceg. That felt sharp as fuck. Didn't matter. Kai Kara-France nukes him right after that. He was winning right up until that point too. So, I mean, I don't know what to make of that one. I guess just can't sleep on Kai Kara's power still these days, huh? It is what it is. But hey, we about broke even in the UFC, so we'll take that. We'll take it on the chin in the PFL and try to, you know, downgrade the degeneracy just a little bit, at least in the leagues outside of the UFC. But we got a dumpster diver sitting here ready to go. I want to dive straight into this fresh bad boy. I hope you all are kicking ass and taking names this week. I plan to do so myself, and in order to get that accomplished, I've brought in none other than Pepe Silva himself. Pepe, my guy, how you doing?
What up, bro? Thanks for having me on for the worst card of the year. Just kidding.
My God.
Bro, you're like the main event whisperer lately with DDP, Bilal Muhammad, these huge main events. You're just Mr. Big Card, but main events haven't been great for me. I was looking at my track bets, and main events are like one of my worst capped position spot on the card. I don't know why. So I'm hoping I can turn that around this week. Maybe I'll look to you for some advice on this one.
Yeah, I go in waves, man. I'm usually like an undercard better. You know, I usually do really well with the grungier undercard bad type of fights. And these types of cards where, you know, everything's a little messy, I tend to do really, really well. The pay-per-view cards and the main events, those really are not a strong suit for me. But I've figured it out, Pepe. I really have. I found something out about myself this week. I put this out on Twitter. My gift and my curse is I don't believe that anybody is special. So if I think a fighter is special, it's taken me a certain amount of time to get to that conclusion. And then I end up making money. Dricus du Plessis, Bilal Muhammad. Like I got my guys that, like, if you're going to give me plus money, if you give me a decent matchup, I'll see the things that other people are missing and I'll take advantage and I'll pounce on those opportunities. The problem is that bites me in the ass. Alex Pereira, Carlos Prates, like these are the guys that I'm just like, nah, like he's not, I see the holes. He's not that good. And so then I lose money trying to bet against those guys. I gotta find a way to iron it out so I'm still able to hit my profitable spots and, you know, avoid betting against these guys that are just destined for greatness that I seem to not believe in.
It seems
gotta find the sweet spot.
It seems like the only bets I'm hitting these days are the WMMA ones, and I seem to be losing every other one. So I might have to just keen in on what I've been doing well at and doing more of that, maybe upping the unit on, you know, the spots that I'm feeling really good about and not spreading myself so thin. I know you've talked about that. Sometimes, you know, I always try to like look at my results and see what I'm doing wrong so that I can, you know, move forward. And I think lately I've been putting too many bets out there, too many totals. I seem to be getting burned on totals a lot this year, burned on props.
Been weird this year.
Yeah, so it's been a big leak in my game as totals and props this year. So I think I'm going to stick more to money line and just taking bigger stands on, you know, the fights that I have a lot of conviction on and see how that goes.
I absolutely think that does make sense, man. It's probably something that I need to do myself. You know, like for instance, the PFL card. I kind of expected I would break even, you know, 2-3, 3-2, you know, that kind of thing. I could have picked one, man. I could have had one bet, and if I lose one unit on the night, call it a day. Instead, I reverse sweep and lose 9. Like, it's all about optimization. I'm here trying to have fun, but losing is not fun. So you got to do a little bit better. So at least you're having a good time with it.
Yeah. And like some investors with stocks and stuff, they like to spread their portfolio really wide. And then others like to take huge positions in spots that seem to be very solid. So it's the same way with sports betting too, in my opinion.
For sure. It is very, very similar. It is very similar. All right, guys. We have got some fights to get into, though. That was enough of an introduction there for you. I'll stop crying over spilt milk on my bets last week, and let's make some new ones instead. This is UFC Vegas 96. I'm joined by my guy, Pepe Silva. Make sure you check him out. Seriously, one of the sharpest, most accurate bettors in the game. Absolutely love the guy, and him coming on the show and giving us his knowledge is a big, big favor. So make sure you guys check him out and support him. And, of course, this is the home of fight. If you guys are not involved, get in the boat, baby. We're taking off. Let's go. First fight of the evening, we have got Wang, and she is coming to the UFC, taking on Victoria Leonardo. And I got to tell you, Pepe, this is right what we're talking about, right? Like, you've had some success in women's MMA, so that's good. Maybe you can lead us here. But I just don't believe people are special. This girl, Wang, she's 5-0, making her UFC debut, off the road to UFC. Everybody who listens to this podcast knows I've planted my flag. The road to UFC fighters suck, Pepe. I don't believe in them whatsoever. We've got one or two that are okay. Everybody else is getting their asses whooped when they make it to the UFC level. They're just not ready for it yet. But the UFC is trying to push them. They need some more love in China. They need some more Asia market. I get it. But I'm looking for opportunities to win bets. Wang seems like she's pretty cool, man. She's another joker. We've got like 4 of them now in the UFC. But she does the whole face paint and everything. She rocks it. She's really cool, strong personality. She's big. She's physical. She does look like she's very physically strong, which for some of these Asia fighters, usually they're a little on the lighter side, a little on the physically weaker side. They don't cut as much weight. She doesn't seem to subscribe to that thought process. She's got a big right hand, great killer instinct. She's got a kickboxing and wushu sanda background, I believe. Doesn't move her head. Doesn't move her head even an inch. Like she will always be right on the center line. So she can be hit. She just hasn't fought anybody. Her best win is former UFC fighter Yanan Wu. Like, they need people over there so bad. Wu got wrecked in the UFC and they put her back on the circuit over there, trying to work her way back. That's this girl's best victory. She will have a 2-inch reach advantage over Victoria Leonardo in this spot, but she turned pro in MMA at age 30. She is not a young up and coming type of prospect. I like to talk about how fighters generally are themselves. They're developed. They're about as good as they're going to get, generally speaking, around 32, 33 years old. You know, they're not going to see a ton of improvement beyond that point, unless your name is Alex Pereira or Angela Hill, who we'll talk about a little later on the card. Congratulations, China. You have yourselves an Amanda Lemos. That's what this girl is to me. Victoria Leonardo, 9-5. She's 1-3 off of Dana White's Contender Series. So it's been a real rough run for my girl, Victoria Leonardo. And I call her my girl because there was a day where I just made the most spectacular soul read of all time and put a max bet on her when she fought Mandy Bohm. And that felt really good, but it wasn't even a clean victory, Pepe. That was a tough fight. You know, it was still a back and forth affair. She just doesn't seem to have it at this level. She's one of these meat and potatoes. I'll take your offense and walk through it. Homer Simpson type fighters. She'll take a punch to give a punch. She keeps coming forward. She relies on that aggression, but she's not athletic enough, and she just doesn't have the skill set at the UFC level. She's been knocked out 4 times, and she's coming off getting flatlined in round 1 by Natalia Silva. The UFC is just using her as cannon fodder. But this line, Pepe, my God. This chick is coming into the UFC. She's the biggest favorite on the board right now, and she's minus 900 at this point. Let me double check that here. I am seeing minus 1,000 now. She officially has surpassed Michael Morales as the biggest favorite on the board here. Plus 650, it looks like, the comeback on Victoria Leonardo. Man, and this is one of those ones where just for sheer non-belief, shits and giggles, Alex Reyes last week. Yeah, I can't get to minus 1,000 here. It would be plug your nose and hope that we can play spoiler with Leonardo one more time. But at the end of the day, I guess you got to pick Cong Wang. I want to hear your thoughts on this one, man, because I really was debating just lining a unit on fire with Victoria Leonardo this week.
Well, I will say from a money line perspective, I do think it's a dog or pass, but it seems like a setup fight for sure. The UFC just announced that they're going to be returning to China. They announced it on the 15th. I read an article that they're returning to China for an event. So I do think they're trying to get some more Chinese prospects in the viewers' eyes. So, you know, like you said, that doesn't always pan out. But this girl does seem like she is kind of the goods, in my opinion. I think it's a really bad matchup for Leonardo. I will say Leonardo has been an underdog in all of her UFC fights. So, but on the other hand, the girls that she's losing to are very solid fighters of the division, like Natalia Silva, Melissa Gatto, Manon Fiorot. Though that's a very difficult schedule for the UFC. Even on the Contender Series, she was a big underdog against Chelsea Hackett, who people thought was going to be a good prospect. On the regional scene, she loses to Erin Blanchfield via head kick, Miranda Maverick on Invicta. So all of her UFC losses are ranked fighters currently, but what you do see is that she has a weakness for getting head kicked. And now they're putting her against Cong Wang, who is a good kickboxer. She beat Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing in 2015. Her striking's really solid. This is going to sound very mean, but I mean it as a compliment. But she kind of fights like a dude, and she looks like a dude in there. She's very strong, very physical, and very composed, very fast. I think she's going to be able to get a KO against Leonardo. Leonardo is very tough, don't get me wrong, but she didn't react the greatest against Silva when she was getting tagged up. Silva is a great striker, but she hasn't been putting girls out very easily. So, it was kind of a red flag. So I think Kong gets the finish in this fight.
I'm with you there, man. I feel like they have broken my girl Victoria Leonardo. In her last fight, she just was reacting so poorly to those shots. I think it's the whole you rely on that durability for so long, and then one day it's just not there anymore. There's so many times, unless your name's Dan Hooker, there's so many times that you can take power shots like that and then just keep on eating them. She's done, man. I think the confidence is shot. I was looking at her Instagram, and I don't even know where she's training for this fight. It's one of those ones where she's doing like little backyard seminars, and I don't see her fight. She's not training with anybody that I see that I know or that is well known or anything like that.
She was training with Judice, so she's a Louisiana girl. So there's a few of them down there. Andrea Lee sometimes trains there, but I haven't seen any pictures with Andrea Lee lately. Just some work with Judice, and yeah, the UFC hasn't done her any favors in matchmaking whatsoever. I think they were kind of hoping that Mandy Burm would beat her on that European card, because it was a card in Europe, in the UK, and Mandy Burm is from Germany. So I think, they've been trying to use her as a stepping stone. For whatever reason, they don't like her at all. They haven't given her any easy matchmaking, and she's just getting older at this point and even regressing. So it's pretty clear what's going to happen.
Completely agree, man. It gives me my poor boy. It gives me Brian Kelleher vibes. You know what I mean? Like he was good, he was solid, he was competitive, and they just put him through the fucking meat grinder until eventually it was like, all right, like this is just one step too far. And that's what this fight feels like too.
The UFC is very clear about when they want to build a prospect, even more so now than ever. We'll get to it later with Caio Borralho. They take certain fighters in very small or very long route to really develop them and build their hype, get the highlights. And then with others, they just give them like a really rough road and make them, the B-side in all their fights.
It's so weird. Well, yeah, there are a couple fights on this card that we can talk about like that, where they mark somebody, they just like X them off from day one. And it's like, you got the toughest schedule possible. And if you come out smelling like roses, okay, great. But we're ready to just throw you away from day one. It's wild they do that. Or like how certain fighters get nothing but their worst case scenario matchup. Again, I've got an example for that later on this card, and we'll talk about it. It's nuts, man. But we're seeing this about the same. Probably going to be a knockout, unfortunately, against Leonardo here. Wang by KO. We're both agreeing on that. The bookies don't want you touching this one. It's 10-1. You're going to have a real hard time finding a way to make money on Wang. I'm sure the prop is like a -220 for the KO prop or something like that even. And if this thing greases its way to a decision, everybody loses. All right, guys. Next up, we have got Josiane Nunes. She's taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti. I love this fight, Pepe. This is one of those ones where the degenerate blood gets pumping a little bit. Everyone looks at this fight and low-level MMA, get it off my TV. And I'm like, no. I like this. Josiane Nunes, she's a nuclear little fire hydrant. She's got the same body type as Daniel Cormier. She comes in there winging big old overhands and big old power hooks. She's got stupid power. I still, for the life of me, don't know how she hasn't cut down another weight class. She dropped from 135 I'm sorry, from 145 to 135. And that just seems like it should have been the start. How is she not at 115 with how short she is? She's still fighting at 125, shortest weight class, or shortest fighter in the weight class. And every single thing she does is power looping, and she just smashes people. The height says 5'2". I kind of think she's 5 flat. Cavalcanti, on the other hand, she's 26 years old. She's 1-0 in the UFC, and she's taken a whole year off since her victory over Zarah Fairn. That's the age group where we like to expect these fighters are going to make leaps and bounds of improvements. They're going to get way better. They've got their experience under their belt. And she already seemed like she had a very well-rounded game coming into that fight. She's the former LFA champion before she made it over to the UFC. She's got a really great frame for the weight class. Fairn is known for being like the biggest, tallest monster in this weight class right now. And Jacqueline did not look like she was out of place. I mean, she was a little shorter, obviously, but she was not physically outmatched in that fight, which really surprised me, at least, going into it. She is so smooth on her feet. She is so light the way she moves and cuts angles, and she is so elusive. Her defensive striking is just absolutely gorgeous. She parries really well, and she's just so hard to fight. She's so hard to find in there. Zarah Fairn, there were moments in that fight where the punches, I swear, were like millimeters away from her face. And she just didn't flinch. Like, she was cold as ice in that cage that night. Once she finds the range, she is fully confident in her skill set. She knows she's not going to get touched, and she exposes that. I absolutely love her game. She will have a 3-inch reach advantage in this spot, which is wild because Josiane Nunes' arms are so damn long. She's 6 inches taller, and in the last fight with Nunes, she really struggled with the jab of Zarah Fairn. You know, we all were beating on the gas tank of Zarah Fairn. She's going to gas out. She's going to slow down. And that's why that fight got really interesting. But as long as she kind of just controlled her breathing and stuck the jab in the face of the shorter fighter Nunes, she was really having moments when she kept to that game plan. I don't think Nunes is going to be able to catch Cavalcanti in this fight, frankly. I think she'll be able to stay on the outside. She'll be able to stick and move, cut angles, and just kind of do whatever she wants. She's minus 192 in this spot, and I'm surprised it's that short. Pepe, am I crazy for wanting to chalk up on a women's MMA fight here?
No, I don't think you're crazy. The only play I have for this fight card so far is Cavalcanti. I got her at minus 140 and minus 170. So I have her to win about 2 units. And, you know, I like what I see a lot from Cavalcanti. She seems like a really solid prospect. Number one, she's the appropriate size for the division, perfect size. And then she is 4 years younger, 6 inches taller with 4-inch reach advantage. And I really like her technical striking. She's going to have the speed advantage. And I just don't think Nunes is that good. I think she was super overrated, honestly. You know, she comes to the UFC. Her regional tape doesn't look good at all. She's beaten soccer moms. And then they give her Bia Malecki, who's a terrible fighter, and she gets a first-round finish. And it was like the perfect thing to happen, really, because the way that I view fighters where, like, I don't think they're good, but the UFC is matchmaking them to have them succeed is they're building fade equity for the future. Now, you know, certain fighters develop and they start outperforming your prior expectations. So you have to be careful that you don't get anchored to this person being a fade. But in the case of Josiane Nunes, I didn't really see too much development from her game. She just beat a really fragile non-UFC caliber fighter and Bia Malecki. Then they match her up with Zarah Fairn in her next fight, and I wasn't really. I never thought Zarah Fairn was UFC caliber either. I was never a fan of her. Never someone I would want to bet money on. So it looked like another spot where they were going to build fade equity with Josiane, but. I think I ended up playing the over 1.5. Everyone was like, oh, yeah, Nunes, it's a lock. She's going to knock her out. But I was just thinking, I'm like, Zarah has to be like just the least bit not fragile in order to survive. And, you know, she was able to make it to the end. And she even won round 1. I thought Fairn might pull that off. And I
bet her there, man.
And I
plugged my nose. I took the plus 425. I was mad.
Yeah. So then she beats Fairn, and she looks like shit. She lost round 1, and she barely gets to it by getting the win. and then she faced Chandler in her next fight, and I went big on Chandler and at underdog odds. So I knew Nunes was a terrible grappler. She's like one of the worst grapplers in the division. She doesn't, and the thing is, she doesn't have good cardio either. She spams the left hand. She's undersized. She's a negative grappler. That's just like the worst combination for WMMA. You know, if she was like a power puncher in middleweight or light heavyweight, now we're talking. But in WMMA, it's all about cardio, volume, grappling upside. And she just doesn't have any of it. So I don't see her, you know, having much success. And then you go to the Cavalcanti side, and her striking is very technical. She has great distance management, very smart, good fight IQ, solid volume. She's going to be able to get her leg kicks off, slow Nunes even more, land hard. She doesn't have a ton of power, but she has knocked down fighters on the regional scene. She hasn't fought the worst level of competition either coming into the UFC. She's been training in Vegas full time. She looks like she's in tremendous shape. I think she's in her prime right now. I think I give her the grappling upside. I know she doesn't use it a ton. She has a win over Nora Cornell on the regional scene, who beat Melissa Mullins in her last fight. Yeah, Melissa Croden is pretty good in LFA. That was a title fight. And then she 30-27 Zara Farron in her debut. You like to see that? Very clean. So
very clean.
Yeah, I like Cavalcanti in this spot, and I like her as a prospect going forward. I'm excited for her. Just got to avoid that overhand left in round one, but I feel pretty good about it. I feel like my money's in a solid spot despite what happens.
I love the numbers that you got. I wish I had looked ahead and gotten in there, because minus 140 sounds like a dream to me in this spot. I think she's parlayable still, guys. I really do. I do think she's the much better side here, much higher ceiling. She's already better. She's already more technical. And like Pepe said, as long as she avoids Armathy, you know, and that one big massive overhand winging shot, she should be good to go. Pepe, tell me you got the Armathy reference. Do you get that one?
No.
That's anybody who's watched Rick and Morty. There's an episode where they go to like a post-apocalyptic desert wasteland type of planet, and to distract while they're going to steal some shit, they put Morty, you know, he's like a 12-year-old kid. They put him in like a death ring to like fight these guys, and Rick just like injects him with the leftover dead body of like some dude that had died previously, but all they could find of him was just this one massive arm. So it's this 12-year-old boy, and he's got an arm the size of the rest of his body, and the arm has like a mind of its own. And he's just out there like massacring and murdering people, like smashing them. Is the most violent, bloody episode you've ever seen. But the arm is on like a revenge tour, and he's just along for the ride. I call Nunes Armathy every time I break the fight down, because she's got that one big overhand, and even when she flexes, you can tell one arm's bigger than the other. Like, you know which one she favors in there.
She's a tough girl. I'll give her that. I mean, she's shown some heart. She seems like she has a pretty good chin, so I could see Cavalcanti by decision, honestly.
That's what I was thinking. I actually think Cavalcanti by decision is probably the way to go.
So,
now, with the grappling deficiency, with the year off and improvements, you can't count out that maybe she finds her way to a finish. And that's why I was thinking parlay. But, if I had to pick a prop, it would be the decision prop.
Yeah.
All right. Really glad to hear we're on the same page for that one, man. We were on the same page for King Casey O'Neill last week, and that turned out pretty well.
Yeah. And Rosa the week before. I know we were both big on that one.
That's right. We're on a roll when we're linking up here without talking to each other prior. So definitely will be getting in on that in one way, shape, or form. All right, guys. Next fight up, we got Jose Medina, and he's taking on Zach Reese. This is a really intriguing fight to me here, Pepe. So Zach Reese, he is the king right now of MMA's recency bias crowd, right? He is all the rage. Everyone loves this guy. Round one. He's a murderer. He makes it to the UFC off of Dana White's Contender Series, and my boy gets melted by Cody Brundage in round one. Picked up, slammed. He gets his head taken off. It was amazing. I cashed the round one Brundage prop. It was a beautiful night. So he's 7-1 now, though, because he immediately bounced back with a huge win over Julian Marquez. But that's where he goes from being a minus 220 favorite against Cody Brundage to being a underdog to Julian Marquez. And we are all just right back on the train. He's a minus 400 favorite here in this spot. Now, I don't know if the UFC thinks much of a Jose Medina. Pardon me, guys. I was, like I said, I was in Vegas this week, so the voice isn't what it should be today. Medina is 11-3. He's 33 years old, so he's older. He's not necessarily a big prospect or anything like that. He's also coming off Dana White's Contender Series, but he's a Homer Simpson type, man. He gave Magomed Gaziasulov everything he could handle. That guy came out, took him down, kicked his leg, hit him with everything he had. And Jose Medina is the type of guy that stood in front of him, smiled, and then said, "Let's go, baby." And in round 3, Magomed is huffing and he's puffing and he's looking for the clock, and Medina's doing the Diaz like point every time he clips him with a shot. He just kept on coming forward. On top of that, that's the wrong weight class for Medina. The guy was out of shape. He was flabby up at 205. He got his shit together and he's dropping down to 185 here in this spot. I believe he's training out at Intram Gym leading up to this one. Man, this is dog or pass if I've ever seen it. I want to hear what you've got to say here on this one, Pepe, but I'm extremely tempted to take another fade spot here on Zach Reese because I'm just not sure what to make of this guy. Even in his loss against Cody Brundage, we never saw him outside round 1. I don't know if he's got good cardio. I don't know if he's got good durability. All I know is he's got incredible offense. For all I know, he's still a glass cannon. And this is exactly the kind of guy that if you don't get rid of him early, we know he's going to be hanging around late. We know Jose Medina is going to be coming for it the deeper this fight goes. So realistically, Zach Reese is bigger, taller, longer. He's explosive. He's in incredible shape. He's another guy that looks like an action figure. So he is going to have a lot of advantages. But I can't get to minus 500 when I don't know what he looks like once round 2 starts. I can't get to minus 500 when I don't know at the UFC level what it looks like when he takes a punch. You know, he's melted everybody that he's fought. It's never been anything but one-way traffic. And he always finds his way to the ground. And when he finds his way to the ground, he finds his way to his back a lot. And that's so concerning to me because arm bars don't work at the UFC level, especially in men's MMA, at least not consistently.
Tell that to Sergey Spivak.
Exactly. I know, right? Like that's the way everyone can throw that example at me for this one. But Tybura was like embarrassed by himself. You know, he rolled over and was like, oh God, like his jiu-jitsu coach whipped him, gave him lashes with his belt when he got back after that fight, because that shit just is not supposed to happen. Every once in a while, you'll catch somebody sleeping, but that's kind of been Zachary Reese's calling card. He'll catch these guys with arm bars on the regional scene. You ain't doing that 5 times in the UFC. So what happens after round 1? I think this is maybe a hold your nose and live bet type of spot. You know, maybe a Medina round 2, round 3 type of spot, because he sure comes in looking motivated. He looks like he's in great shape. I like his boxing. It just comes down to, can he withstand the early barrage from Zach Reese, or is he going to fall into an arm bar because he just doesn't quite know what he's doing once they're on the ground? Dog or pass betting, I unfortunately have to pick Reese because I see he's got the cleanest path to winning this fight. But this is not a guy that I'm going to be loading up as far as parlays and stuff goes. Yeah,
I was surprised that the UFC signed Medina for a fight. I mean, he lost 30-27 on the Contender Series. Yeah. He didn't even win his fight. Like, I don't know. What's he doing in the UFC?
I think it was because he was so fun. You know, even Bisping was like, I like this guy.
Yeah, he'll lose some brain cells for 10K.
Exactly. He'll lose brain cells for 10K. That's
10K goes a little further in Brazil. Am I right?
Yeah.
So I guess I would wait till the weigh-ins for this one. I'd like to see what he looks like at 185.
He's got to take his shirt off.
Yeah, I'm usually kind of cautious about fighters going down in weight class. So, but he didn't look like he was in great shape. So, I mean, I get it. Reese did go he went 9 minutes with Kevin Holland on the amateur scene. I haven't seen that fight. So I don't know what he looked like outside of round 1. I'd be curious to see that. Might have to DM Holland and see what's good, what happened with that fight. But yeah, I don't really have too much interest in the underdog, honestly, just because he seems pretty like he's not UFC level, but there's just not a ton of information on Reese, to really see how good he is, if he has cardio past 10 minutes, what he looks like outside of round 1, how good his grappling really is, because he's fought a bunch of bums and he's finished them early. I'm curious to see how his takedowns are, because he looked uncomfortable against Brundage in that short amount of time. But it was his UFC debut. So, I think a lot of times we got to give people a break with their debut. He is young. He seems like he has a perfect frame for the division. He looked really good against, what's his name, in his last fight. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to wait. I'm going to see how Medina where's Medina from?
Medina is Bolivia, I believe.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, well, Bolivia.
Yeah, the money goes further in Bolivia too.
I'm sure it goes a lot further in Bolivia.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna pass on this fight. I might look at a Reese by submission prop, because Medina had been finished regionally by submission. I mean, if you can get a -400 for his most likely win condition, that might be a solid look. Medina's tough as nails. He's gonna be harder to knock out, but if you rock him, you can grab his back and choke him out. So I will predict Reese by submission round 1.
I'm kind of right there with you on this one here, Pepe, because I know I started this whole breakdown with arm bars from guard don't work at the UFC level, but we're not sure Medina is UFC level. And from what I understand, he's a little bit of a wrestle boxer, so he will shoot for takedowns. He will try to get this fight to the ground, and we know Reese is extremely comfortable there. This is the kind of guy that he might make that mistake. He might get on top of this guy and not quite be ready with the armbar defense, the fast hips. So I think Reese by sub is a very good look, and because Medina can take a shot, because he's got that chin, because he's so tough and durable, I don't like it.
Also, I'm just saying, Zach Reese, he's a very tall guy, 6'4", 77 inch reach. So he could wrap in a guillotine too with his long arms, and being taller, it would be easier to leverage a guillotine. So I could see a few different paths for submission for him.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I'm looking at Bet Online. Medina KO or Medina round 2 is 18-1. Medina round 3 is 25-1. So yeah, those numbers would be definitely sprinkle worthy if I decided to go that route. And I do think live betting would make some sense too, kind of like Dan Hooker last week, where I need to like what I see in the fight for that first round and then dive if I really want to. But
yeah, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till like props are fully out on domestics before I say too much. But I'll probably have a couple ways to attack it.
I like it. All right, guys. All right. We're moving straight along. We've already got almost 600 viewers here in the show. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Hit the like button if you're here. If you're on Twitter, do me a favor. Come on over to YouTube, hit the like button real quick, and then you can go on back to Twitter. I promise. It's okay. All right, guys. Next up, we got Slavaklas, Viacheslav, Borshchev, and he's taking on James Llontop. I am very curious about this fight, Pepe. This is the one that I was talking about earlier. Slava is a fan favorite. Everybody loves Slava Claus. He's got a great personality. He's fun. Like, people just instantly connect with him because he's entertaining and he's all smiley, even though he wants to go out and rip people's heads off. This is the kind of guy that you would think the UFC would give a little bit of semi-favorable matchmaking to. And they don't. He's a kickboxer, a world-class kickboxer with serious knockout power in his prime at 32 years old. And they're like, grapplers. Every single fight, we're going to make this guy wrestle. Like, what the hell, man? He's got no takedown defense whatsoever. I could take down Slava Claus. Now, I couldn't keep him down, obviously, but I'll bet you I could hit a double leg on him. This guy doesn't have any ability to wrestle. His scrambling ability is actually pretty decent. His get-up game is all right. He gives up 9+ takedowns in a fight because he will work his way back up to his feet. He just can't keep himself up on his feet once he's there. And then when he gets grounded yet again, his opponents actually start getting tired because he's the kind of guy that's got that endless cardio. He'll just keep going and going and going. When he has a minute on the feet, people are diving for their lives because he's got some of the nastiest, most effective calf kicks we've seen in the UFC. He hits freaking hard. This guy can put anybody out, and we have seen him hurt. We have seen him rocked. We've seen him wobbled. But he also has really good recovery. He seems to be able to come back from those. Even like the Nazim Sadikov fight. Both guys were out on their shields multiple times in that fight, and it went all 15 because they just were too tough, able to hang in there and stick around. And I just don't understand why the UFC hates this guy so much. I did appreciate the plus money on Chase Hooper because that was beautiful. Everybody doubted my boy Chase getting the finish there in that spot. And I tried to tell y'all, he will style on top of somebody who's on the ground like none of these wrestlers can because he's going to be chaining jiu-jitsu moves and submissions and things like that. In my estimation, Pepe, this is the easiest fight that Slava's had since he fought Dakota Bush. He's taking on James Llontop, which gotta love the Goku fight name. I'm a DBZ nerd myself, grew up watching it. Gotta love it. 14-3. He's just 25 years old, so he is a prospect. He's a real prospect that could be really making leaps and bounds improvements. He is big for the weight class. Missed weight in his last fight against Chris Padilla, and he got tapped out in round 1. I mean, that was embarrassing. Dude's name is Taco, and he just got absolutely styled on in that fight. You got to wonder if maybe something went wrong in the weight cut. You got to wonder if he had some kind of an issue or something like that. I expect a better version of him here. But when I looked back at the tape, Llontop is a guy who mixes in the wrestling. We've seen him pin guys up against the fence or trip people, dump people. He's not a real wrestler, though. Pepe, he doesn't keep them down. He doesn't have a top game. He doesn't sit on their chests. He doesn't wet blanket. He's a striker. This guy wants to get on the feet and bang. And I think it's the most pure striker that Slava Claus has faced since he's been here. Sadikov can wrestle. You know, I guess Meerschaert's probably got no ground game on him whatsoever, so pretty similar to something like that. But look what happened in that fight. Slava KO'd him in round 2. If you're going to give me a guy that will stand and bang with Slava, a guy who might be in the wrong weight class, mind you, I don't see why we wouldn't be going to war with Slava Claus. I know a lot of people are going to be real nervous to lay the chalk price tag, especially because he just got finished by Chase Hooper. But remember the Spork thing we talked about at the beginning of the show? Chase Hooper is one of my guys. I saw him and I went, I don't care what you say. This kid's going to be special. And I've made a lot of money betting on Chase Hooper because of that. Other people are down on him. Other people are going to write that off as a bad loss for Slava. I saw it coming a mile away. So I think this is a step down. I think it's a step in the right direction. Unless Llontop has made just massive improvements and looks completely different from what I've seen in the past, I think Slava beats him. He's very heavy on that lead leg. I think the calf kicks are going to be massive in this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised by like a leg kick TKO here for Slava. I'm very interested in betting Slava, and you and I talked about it before the show, Pepe. I want to pull the trigger on this fight card. There's some moves that I want to make, but I need just a little bit of reinforcement before I do so. I feel like Slava should be minus 600 in this spot, but instead he's like minus 240. So what, am I missing something, or is this a market issue where people are just too nervous to go back to the well?
Well, I do agree with you that it kind of does seem like the Meerschaert fight here, where Slava was, I think he was like minus 180 or something to Meerschaert, and you know, he ended up getting the TKO. I could definitely see something like that happening. I was going back and looking through Llontop's regional scene to see how good his wrestling was, like you, and he does go for takedowns, but he's pretty weak. His wrestling is pretty shitty. Like you said, when he gets people down, he doesn't have the jiu-jitsu to hold them down. He doesn't have really the strength to hold them down either. So even on the regional scene, their Peruvian regional fighters were getting up no problem. I guess the only thing is, you know, there is a pretty big disparity in their age, and you know, generally you don't like fading the younger fighter by that much at such a chalky price. let me see. What is it? 9 years between them?
Yeah, and I know the 10-year age gap is the big one, right? When it's a 10-year difference. So 9, we're knocking right on the door.
And now, Borshchev has taken a lot of damage too. His chin, he's been dropped in a lot of fights. The
That's right.
Sadikov fight was an absolute war. Even on the regional scene, he had been dropped a couple times. But I do like his striking. So it's a 7-year age gap. Llontop has a 4-inch reach advantage, and he's an inch taller. It does seem like a very winnable fight for Slava. I mean, although that Hooper beating, that was a beating. He took a lot of damage in that Hooper fight. And it's a pretty quick turnaround. It's only 3 months.
Oh, I
So,
missed that. I didn't realize it was that short of a window.
yeah, that was pretty recent. So, that's another thing that I would be kind of worried about,
That is concerning.
laying heavy juice. That was only 3 months ago, and he got dropped, and then he got ground and pounded very heavily for the whole fight. So I would be worried about that. But he doesn't show any quit. That's the thing. He always fights through it. They had to. I mean, the ref could have stopped that fight. He took a ton of damage in that fight. So I don't know if I would be playing. What would be interesting though is maybe like an under. Maybe an under 2.5, because 1.5 isn't that much time for 145. I don't really like playing over unders unless it's like a huge mismatch.
Mhm.
But an under 2.5 could be interesting. Like you said, if Slav is able to get his game off, get the leg kicks going, he's got some power in his hands, and he's shown that he carries his power late in fights too. So, he was even tagging Mike Davis up late in the fight and making Davis make sure he was wrestling, because Davis didn't really want to stand with him. So
Nobody
Slava
wants
is
to.
a
That's the
very
thing.
good striker. And yeah, I don't think Llontop is going to have a lot of wrestling success. So I see this as a kickboxing match. And, with the issues I have with Slava taking all that damage recently, getting up there in age, I think an under would be the way I would play it.
Okay. I do not mind that whatsoever. Now, I am looking here. As you're talking here, I'm doing a little bit of stalking here. And it looks like Lontop has been doing some work with like Iridium. So he's in the room with Diego Lopez, and guys like that. And that's the type of camp that you would expect some serious improvements from a guy like this. So I went from thinking that this might be a smash spot for Slava Claus to going, you know what? I need to see weigh-ins. I got to see what this guy looks like. If he can make the weight class healthy, that is well, okay, sorry, Dan, you're right. The Iridium is not a team. They were tagged in the post. I'm looking at the Instagram post and reading it off. My bad. But I want to see this guy actually on the scales. I want to see if he can make weight. I want to see if he takes a Chepe, extra 4.5 pounds and is all smiley on the scales. That could be an absolute problem. And I'm glad you mentioned the Slava Claus turnaround, because I'll be honest, man, that's usually something that I hone in on and I look for pretty regularly. I completely whiffed on it this week, and a 3-month turnaround after all the elbows that he ate from Chase Hooper, that could be an issue for his durability.
Yeah,
So
it looks like Lontop is still training in Peru, which it doesn't look like a great gym, honestly.
okay,
The guy has FFC tattooed on his neck, which is the regional promotion. So he might be going back to FFC after this fight. We'll see.
that just seems like a bad choice, man. If you're gonna be a professional MMA fighter, how are you gonna go get a regional show tattooed?
That's the
on your
only
neck?
tattoo you can't get. I mean, like, professional fighter is like the job where anything goes. You can get a tattoo on your face, you can get one anywhere, whatever. But the only one not to get is the regional promotion name. Like, why would you label yourself that?
Yeah. Right? I think my guy Dan saying we're gonna have to turn that from FFC to NFC after this fight.
Yeah. I think this could be a really fun fight though. Llontop, he's hittable. He throws a lot of volume. So yeah, this should be an exciting fight in the small cage. I can definitely see action, and yeah, I'm liking the under more and more the more I think about it.
Yeah, I don't mind that one bit, man. One of these guys definitely should go out in this fight. All right, everybody. Moving on to the next one here. We've got Dennis Buzukja. He's taking on Danny Silva, and it's just Dana White's Contender Series all over the place, Pepe. They're making it clear that if you're on a skid, there's a show on Tuesday, and your ass is getting replaced. So we're seeing a bunch of these guys that are fighting for their jobs right now. Both these dudes come off of Dana White's Contender Series, and it's a super intriguing spot to me because I've had a theory lately about these Dana White's Contender Series fighters. I've said that unless your name is Bo Nickel, unless you're one of these guys that has 2 pro UFC fights and they're really just trying to get you some cage time, get you some experience, bring you along, you got to pass the eye test on those types of spots. If you're not one of them and you legitimately need a second try on Dana White's Contender Series, you actually compete and either lose or compete and it's not impressive enough. I don't think those guys do very well. I'm starting to categorize here a little bit.
In the UFC or?
In the UFC.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So if you take a second attempt at the Dana White's Contender Series, and you're not one of the special ones, you take a second attempt, and then you make it to the big show, I don't think the track records are very good. Jamie Pickett, is kind of a perfect example of a guy like that. Mm-hmm. Well, this fight.
Even when.
Yes. This fight is an example of this because you've got a 1-time Dana White's Contender Series fighter versus a 2 times Dana White's Contender Series fighter. You've got Silva, who only needed the 1 effort. Dennis Buzukja went on the show twice. And on that second time, he got the call up to the UFC. He is now 1-2 since being in the UFC. And his last fight was a big round 3 knockout. It was very impressive, but it was against another Dana White's Contender Series guy who also was on the show twice. So it was just a massive, massive step down for Dennis Buzukja. He's essentially fighting a regional scene guy inside the UFC cage. I'm not sure that Dennis Buzukja is UFC caliber at this point, man. He's at a great gym, Longo Weinman. He is 26, so it's one of those spots where I want to say maybe we can give him a little credit. Maybe with some time and some seasoning, the right coaches, a good gym, he'll make some improvements. He'll get there, but I'm just not sure he's got it. He's got a big left hook. He uses that thing really well defensively. He throws a nice check left. He can lead with it as well if he wants to. He flicks these little weak kicks out there that I don't really like, but they're almost his rangefinder, but that's just kind of his game. He likes to bite down and throw hard in the pocket, really rely on that power. But I don't like how he got taken down by guys like Sean Woodson, not somebody who's really known for his grappling. Yes, he's big as shit, but he's not a guy that you should be getting out grappled by at the UFC level, especially if you're training at a camp like Longo Weinman, in my opinion. Danny Silva, 9-1. His UFC debut was a split win over Josh Kalibau. Now that one stings just a little bit because I've been a Josh Kalibau guy for a long time and he just keeps letting me down and disappointing me. Split decision losses left and right. Dude is killing me. But Danny Silva's got fast hands, and even against Josh Kalibau, we talked about it earlier in the show, he is so tough. He is so durable. He's impossible to submit. He should have won his fight this weekend. This guy rocked him in the first round and had him in a mounted guillotine in about 15 seconds into their fight. A lot of people go to sleep there, Pepe. That would have been a round 1 finish against a lot of opponents, just not Josh Kalibau. This guy's being managed by Cub Swanson, and they're just raving about how good he is. He's nasty in the clinch. He always strikes in combinations. I love his big knees, his big elbows. It seems like he's got power in a lot of his different strikes. My only issue is the cardio. He does seem to start hard and fast, and he does edge off and slow down. He looked better against Josh. I will be honest. He kind of bit down on the mouthpiece in round 3, but he was still doing the thing where you drop your arms and you're plodding after your opponent because he was tired. He couldn't keep his hands up in round 3. He was just kind of walking with his hands at his sides to save some energy. So someone who can drag this kid a little bit late might be able to expose him the deeper the fight goes. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's Dennis Buzukja. I know he won his last fight in round 3, but again, big step down in competition, not a real UFC caliber guy. I think Danny Silva's the better prospect of these two. And again, with my theory of 2 times versus 1 times on Dana White's Contender Series, I got to side with Silva here. I'm going to go ahead and pick him to win. And I really wouldn't be surprised if he submitted Dennis Buzukja. Something he couldn't do to Josh Kalibau, he might be able to find that finish against this guy.
Yeah, I think that's a sneaky way to go to look at this fight because already Bet Online is plus 900 for Silva by submission. So domestics, you might be able to get 11 or 12. throw in sub 1, sub 2, there's going to be some big numbers there. And I'm with you on Silva. I like him. I think he's a really solid prospect. On Contender Series, he broke the record, I'm pretty sure, significant strikes in a fight when he fought that, that tough guy who's no good, Angel Pacheco. I like his striking quite a bit. He's a pace and pressure guy. Seems durable as all hell. Seems super tough. I like the way he works the body. His striking selection seems really solid. I've never been a Dennis guy, honestly, but I will say he seems to be improving a bit. But as you mentioned, the fight in which he looked the best was against Connor Matthews, is he UFC caliber? Sometimes it's hard to tell with these guys who get in through Contender Series, because a lot of times they're bringing in really weak opposition on Contender Series, some fraudulent people, so it makes these guys look better than they actually are, and then they end up getting exposed. But from what I saw on tape, Buzukja does look like he's improved his striking a fair bit, but he did get iced by Emmers. He was short notice against Woodson. He gave a pretty good account of himself, I will say, in that Woodson fight. But, the fact that Emmers put him out so easily, I don't like seeing that. Silva seems like a tougher guy, in my opinion. Seems like he's more durable. But the thing is, I don't think I would lay the juice on Silva, just because, they're kind of at similar points in their career. Silva has to prove it a little bit. He beat Pacheco. Pacheco is pretty trash, who went down to 135. And then he missed weight in his last fight against Kulabau. But I do rate the Kulabau win. I think Kulabau is a very solid fighter. I know some people might not think so. I think he is a little underrated, Kulabau. So I rate that win quite a bit. I thought he showed a lot of composure, a lot of, good fight IQ to take that fight and really steal it and end up winning it. So I think that was a solid showing. Kulabau is not an easy out whatsoever. I rate Kulabau higher than Dennis, so I think he's getting a step down in competition. But, they're making you pay for it. So I think this one's a tough one to bet. If anything, I would look at the prop that you had mentioned, honestly.
Okay. All right. I'm glad we're kind of seeing this one the same here. And I will lean favorite or pass in this spot. We've got Dix Insider. I got to mention it just because he's in the chat helping us out. He says, rumor going around that Danny Silva dropped the dumbbell on his foot in the gym. This is unconfirmed, but enough to affect the fight. So just want to make you guys aware that is a rumor flying around. Dixon himself said unconfirmed, but because of that, he's staying away and not betting the fight. So that, always a question with these fighters, man. They're never coming in 100%. You never know. It's funny, Pepe. I had a buddy text me one time. He had legitimate inside information. And it's so rare that this happens to me, where I really get the inside scoop before it breaks to the market and I can actually make a pile. And when this happened, buddy caught a liver kick and went down hard. He looked like $1 million. I was going to win big on this spot. It was flying under the radar. Nobody knew. And then he died in the fight because his opponent caught him with the perfect shot. It was just oh my God. So I try not to read too much into that kind of stuff because it's still a fist fight. You never know what's going to happen once they
I remember everyone was on their Alan Baudot versus Josh Parisian fight. There was this rumor going around that Parisian broke his foot before he went into the fight, and so everyone started hammering Alan Baudot, and then Parisian ends up looking fine, foot not bothering whatsoever, and ends up beating Parisian by TKO in round 2, and just everyone lost their ass trying to follow this inside information. So I try not to get carried away with that kind of stuff. Maybe it's something that'll keep me off playing something, but you never want to over leverage yourself on something that you can't confirm yourself.
Absolutely. And that's where it's at. That's, Dix Insider's my guy. He's always in the chat every single week. So I want to make sure we shout him out for that. He is trying to help. But, Just got to tell you, it's a rumor. It's unconfirmed.
I heard
We
that
don't know for
too.
sure.
I heard it too. So, but I'm not going to let it affect the way I'm capping the fight.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. We'll see. And then you've got guys like, Conor McGregor pulls out of a headliner because he broke his toe, and the champ Alex Pereira with a busted foot steps in. No problem, baby. I'll just come in and do it anyway. Same injury. So you never know. Different pain tolerances. These guys do their own damn thing. So it may not affect much of anything. All right, guys, real quick, let's take a break. First and foremost, this is the home of fight. You guys should know that already by now. We're hanging out on the channel. We're doing good things. If you guys have not joined the free Telegram, please check it out. Link in the description below. You will get news blasts, fun, exciting clips. You'll get cool little stats and facts and all kinds of stuff in here, all for free, interacting and reacting with other MMA fans. So make sure you check it out. Also join the Discord. The link to that is in the description below as well. It is free. I'm in there. It's a real good way to see what I'm playing in there and then interact with a bunch of other degenerates who are into gambling and betting in UFC. Next up, Fight Numbers. My boy Pepe is part of the team here on Fight Numbers. They've got this badass odds screen. You've got picks from professional cappers like himself on there that do a whole hell of a lot better than me. My favorite thing is the tools for the DraftKings and daily fantasy type of stuff. You can run different simulations on the fights and things like that. Actually, Pepe, why am I telling them about Fight Numbers? Why don't you tell them about Fight Numbers? So what is your favorite thing on there? Why should they check it out?
Yeah, the odd screen is probably the coolest thing because it works in live time too. So for live betting, it's nice if you can see an off market number, go and hit that if you're able to. And you can just compare sharp markets from more square markets to see where the money's coming in and at what time. The prop finder is also nice. You just type in the fighter's name and it gives you best price for decision, submission, or KO. And yeah, those are probably my two favorite tools that are going on right now. We're also working on getting a trends tool where our programmer is pulling in a lot more new data for the API. So we're gonna have a new trends tool that'll show like how fighters are performing with different circumstances, UFC debut or coming back off of a loss, things like that. So I'm excited to see where things are going, and yeah, a lot of cool stuff on the site.
Good deal. Make sure you guys get the new mom fade angle in there. Coming off of having
right.
An important one.
Yeah.
All right. And then we got one more to go. Spectation Sports, baby. We're back next month. It's just going to be a couple short weeks, and Spectation Sports is going to be right back around. Cage Titans 67 is coming up. Lights Out Championship. If you guys haven't checked out Spectation Sports, you really should. There are several fighters coming up on this week's Dana White's Contender Series show that we know and are familiar with because we watched them coming up in the shows that Spectation Sports puts on. Finney, actually, I believe, is one of the ones that fought for like Aries FC. So we've got some of his footage and his fights and things like that. Promo code DieHard will get you 20% off. So if you're serious about researching, or if you just want more MMA action to watch more live fights, make sure you check out Spectation Sports. And finally, Bet Openly. We're doing some amazing things with Bet Openly, guys. It's going to be the best tool you've ever used as far as betting goes. You're never going to get limited. It's always peer-to-peer, so you're not going to get locked down. People were throwing thousands of dollars around, especially for like the main event. My guy Maddie put like a 5K bet on Bet Openly for Dricus Du Plessis, and it got filled. There's other big swingers here on Bet Openly, and even if you're playing something that a big party doesn't come take, little guys will. You can get someone taking $5, $10, $20 worth of your action, and then if enough people do it, it adds up. Your bet will eventually get filled. You are paying 1% juice when you win, which is better than any promo code you're going to get at any sports book ever because it's lifetime. The longer you use this platform, the more money you're going to save. And on top of that, I get to be Santa Claus here. I'm giving them out money left and right. We've run the gauntlet 3 different times, guys, with a $600 prize pool. So I've given away $1,800 on this, not counting the weekly contest where we're giving away between $50 and $200 for a weekend UFC pick'em type of contest. I did a $200 giveaway for UFC 305, which, by the way, somehow is still operating. I don't know how. I don't know why. But the Tuesday night's Contender Series lines were mixed in with this week's UFC card. So we've got one poor suck on his picks and should be claiming a $200 prize. But there's one guy who went 4-0 and has his last pick on Tuesday. So he's either going to scoop or he's going to be splitting the pot, and he has to wait until Tuesday to find out. So my bad. Sorry about that. But we're giving away cash. It's a wonderful platform. They've got everything, and they're constantly adding new things for you to gamble on and new ways to bet on and save money. Bet Openly is the wave of the future, you guys. Make sure you come check it out with me. And now we will get back to UFC Vegas 96. I'm joined by Pepe Silva, and we're going to talk about Edmen Shahbazyan and Gerald freaking Meerschaert. Okay. So
can I ask you a quick question? Is Shahbazyan and Meerschaert the co-main, or is Angela Hill and Ricci? Because I'm
seeing Hill Ricci
collecting information on ESPN and then on Tapology, so I wasn't sure if you were aware.
I'm just going off Tapology.
Yeah.
And they have got Hill and Ricci listed as the co-main event. This one looks to be the main card kickoff.
Right on.
Yeah. But you never know. This is the kind of card that they don't really care at all. They'll move this thing around after weigh-ins if they feel like it. Mm-hmm. So that may very well change. Man, this one is a fight that is so easy to just kind of simmer and boil down to me. Edmen Shahbazyan's a guy that has never, ever reached what they thought he was going to be. He's Dana White's Contender Series 2018 alumni. He's been around forever now, and he still can't beat the bad cardio allegations. Like, this guy cannot get his cardio under control. He's got nuclear power, and that bails him out at sometimes. He's still just 26 years old, though, Pepe. That's the thing I got to keep reminding myself. He's still only 26. I worry that they've ruined his confidence. I worry that they might have taken a bit of a toll on his durability and his will to win with the way they rushed him to the top of the division. The UFC is so desperate for stars. They tried to rush him, and it really cost him a couple different times. But in his last fight against AJ Dobson, he looked okay, and then he looked really bad, and then he came back and won it with a nuke. So it's like, I don't know what to make of Edmen Shahbazyan at this point. He's got power that can bail him out of bad situations. He's really working hard on his grappling, but he's still making rookie mistakes. Like, he ended up on bottom against AJ Dobson, something he never should have done because he got overexcited going for a choke, since that's really what he's been working. Bad look, in my opinion. The Dalchalu Giambula fight, he was kind of deer in the headlights until he finally hit him with something big and put him away. But the guys he's losing to are all contenders. You've got Anthony Hernandez, Jack Hermanson, Nasruddin Imavov, Derek Brunson before he was all the way done. Those guys are going to absolutely maul you if you're not ready for that level. So the UFC kind of took a step back, and it seems like they've tried to wait out a guy like Gerald Meerschaert. He's a prospect killer. But now he is 36 years old, and he's another guy who's relied on that durability and then flips the script late in the fight. He is a wicked ground fighter. He's got decent boxing on the feet, but I don't like the way Gerald's been reacting to punches lately, man. He's another one who it seems like the years of fighting is finally taking its toll on him. He's had, 50-ish professional fights? Yeah, 36 and 17. This guy's had so many professional fights, and a lot of those wars where he's had to drag his opponents through hell and back to get the win. He's been knocked out 4 different times. Man, I want to not put my money on Edmen Shahbazyan, but at the same time, this does really feel like a spot where the UFC is pouncing on the fact that Gerald Meerschaert is finally starting to crack a little bit. If Gerald gets Shahbazyan on the ground, it's a wrap. He's going to cook him. He's going to absolutely cook the bad cardio of this kid. Go knead a belly on him and just get him uncomfortable, and he will slowly die on the ground. But if he doesn't get it to the ground, Gerald's never been the greatest wrestler of all time. I think Edmen is so much more powerful and better on the feet, and his technique is still improving. His boxing has always been good. If Shahbazyan connects well, I think it's over. And so I think it's weird to have a favorite that's a puncher's chance, but that's kind of how it feels, because the deeper this fight goes, the more it favors Gerald Meerschaert, man. I'm going to say Edmen by KO, but every time I've said that, he gets cooked. So I'm not betting it. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't decided how I'm going to play this fight, honestly. It's kind of the common theme for the rest of the card where they seem to be pushing a younger fighter who's a big favorite against, a passing of the guard type deal. where they have an older fighter who's a huge underdog, and it kind of seems like they're on their way out, and the big favorite is kind of in their prime. And this is the first example of it on the main card. It seems like a really difficult fight to bet, honestly, because Meerschaert is so tried and tested, but he does have his big weakness is getting knocked out in round 1. So I think this is just a live bet spot, just take Meerschaert after round 1. But I wouldn't even want to bet Shahbazyan by KO or KO1 or anything, because what if he just fights cautious, knows that he needs to save his cardio, and just out technicals Meerschaert. And Meerschaert's wrestling is really poor, you know what I mean? He lacks the physicality to really get it to the ground. So, maybe Shahbazyan just does kind of like what Jocko did to Meerschaert, and just, dance around and point fight, low volume, but land the harder shots. Shahbazyan by decision could be sneaky, honestly.
Yeah. That definitely is an angle that you can take these days on Gerald Meerschaert. Edmen by KO is -170 at Bet Online.
Yeah,
so
fuck that.
It's the most likely outcome, but damn, man, laying 2-1 on a finish prop like that just feels disgusting. If you are a Gerald Meerschaert round 3 for the culture type of person, that's 14-1, and I completely understand. I've donated on that kind of thing myself many a time, where you want to see it, man. Tuivasa by KO, right? I wanted the shoey this weekend, so I get it if you're going to war with Gerald Meerschaert one more time. But I would take more of a live betting stance to it if you've got access to live betting, just because you'll be able to see the look on Edmen Shahbazyan's face. You'll be able to see the fire in his eyes die as he cannot get Gerald Meerschaert out of there. And then the tables will start to turn somewhere in the middle of round 2. I'm going to say Edmen KO, pre-flop, obviously, but watching very, very closely live for that little lack of confidence.
What is like kind of a sneaky prop I was just thinking of? I don't hit it yet because domestics don't have it out yet, but
yeah,
Meerschaert by KO3 is 45-1.
Wow.
Now, everyone knows him for the sub 3, but Shahbazyan's never been submitted. I mean, obviously Meerschaert could submit him, but who's to say he can't just get in dominant position and pound him out, elbows.
I mean, that's what Fluffy did.
Yeah, that's what he, in all of his losses, he's been, that's what Brunson did. That's what Imavov did. That's what Hermanson did.
That's a good look, man. That's actually a really good look.
So 45-1 round 3, that is a pretty crazy number.
Not so bad. Yeah, because, man, you see some of these fighters and they have tendencies. Some guys, I like to talk about it, they're the tough guys. You can elbow them in the face and it doesn't matter. But as soon as you wrap up the neck, they'll go that way. They refuse to get KO'd. Edmen's the opposite. You're not going to sub this guy because he does this. Like, he's immediately turtled and looking to save his skin when he gets on the ground. And if you keep punching, the ref will step in and stop it. So that is a sneaky way to maybe capitalize on Gerald Meerschaert being live at a big number.
Yeah, because a lot of Meerschaert's late submissions are coming off of rocking the guy, so he still has some power too. So yeah, I like that for like a little sprinkle.
I don't hate it, man. I don't hate it. That is a sneaky little sprinkle call out there. Round 3, Gerald Meerschaert, never a bad bet. It's paid for itself and families for years to come. So anybody who wants to go back to war with it, don't mind it. All right. Next up, we've got yet another old versus young matchup here, man. Michael Morales finally getting a step up into the circle here, taking on Neil Magny, the ultimate gatekeeper himself. Depth taxes and Magny by decision, man. I love this guy. I've made so much money on Neil Magny because people are ready to write him off every single time, and he's not quite ready to go. He just ain't dead yet at 37 years old. He drags you deep. He makes you suffer. Neil Magny is an expert at making you fight his fight. He'll lose round 1 a lot. But then the next thing you know, you're kind of staring at the mirror a little bit, and he's just barely out jabbing you. And then your back is grinding up against the cage. And why is he now controlling me instead of the other way around? Like, he's just an expert at doing that, especially against guys who aren't quite ready for it yet. D-Rod, Phil Rowe, like these type of mid to low level guys, the Max Griffin split decision, those are the guys that he's still showing a thing or two. You got to worry about the super prospects, though. Ian Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and now here we've got Michael Morales. Now, we found out that Mike Malott does not fall in that category in his last fight because he completely gave up in that fight. And the cardio was tested by Neil Magny. If you're missing even one little piece of your MMA game puzzle, Neil Magny is the guy that will sniff it out. It'll make you pay for it. Where is the issue with Michael Morales? 16-0 from Ecuador, just 25 years old. This kid is undefeated, had a great fight with Jake Matthews in his last fight, a very appropriate step up in competition in my way of thinking, at least. I like what I saw from him in that fight, except there were a few times where he really was hittable. He dropped his hands. He got hit with some big counter shots. Now, on one hand, I am grateful that I saw him get chin checked and his durability checked out. This kid can take a punch. On the other hand, I would prefer him not to take those punches, especially from a guy like Jake Matthews. Now, you don't really have to worry too much about the power coming from Neil Magny, but Michael Morales will be able to match the height and reach here a little bit. It's going to be a good frame parity type of situation, and that is something that Neil Magny has struggled with in the past. He's used to being the taller, longer guy, and for all of his offensive wrestling capabilities, Neil Magny's a pretty poor defensive wrestler. I was looking back through at Michael Morales' numbers, man, and it's really interesting because he had some wrestling chops early on. Like in his Dana White Contender Series fight, I want to say he landed 4 takedowns, and he hasn't even attempted one since. This man has never attempted a sub in the UFC, and that's been a real fun angle to kind of exploit against Neil Magny because his submission defense seemed to have really regressed recently. I almost had it with Ian Gary. In that last final couple seconds at the end of the fight, he finally decided to advance position and try and tack a sub. I thought I was going to cash a huge, huge ticket. So it's always there. And somebody like this kid, Michael Morales, might want to flex and change up his game a little bit, might want to show a new wrinkle he's been working on. It's kind of a golden opportunity to do so. I really think Michael Morales can hang anywhere this fight goes. I don't know if his cardio is going to get exposed the way Neil Magny does because he's done that to a lot of people before. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Morales is just getting a little tired by the end of the fight because of the suffocating way Neil Magny fights. The dude is human quicksand. But at the end of the day, I think Morales might change it up and might show a little bit of grappling chops this fight, something maybe people aren't quite expecting from a high caliber striker the way he is. But I'm picking the favorite to win. He's 8-1 for a reason. I like the kid. I like Michael Morales, and I'll be very, very tempted to see what the submission number comes out at.
Yeah, I was looking at that too to see what the submission number is, but it's not that
5-1.
5-1. Yeah, I mean, he has one career submission, and it happened over a 0-0 fighter. So I don't really think his submission grappling is that good. I actually thought when he fought Giles that he tapped and the ref didn't see it. It was like a phantom tap that me and a couple other people have talked about before. It looks like he taps to Giles in round 1, but the ref didn't see it. So, yeah, I mean, I do think he kind of has the hardware to be able to beat Neil Magny. The thing about Morales is his whole game is just physicality. He's not really excellent anywhere. His striking is decent. He has decent power, but it's not like anything crazy. His cardio is solid. It's enough to beat like these, ranked 30 to 15 guys. So I do think he's like worthy of being ranked. And it seems like they didn't really give him a step up in this spot. He's coming off beating Max Griffin and then Jake Matthews. I don't really think Neil Magny is much of a test at this point. The only reason that Magny won his last fight is he was fighting a flaky guy, and I don't really see Morales being the flake type. So I think Morales is solid. Magny is very weak to the legs, and I was with you on the Gary sub. I had Gary and sub 2 and sub 3 at huge numbers.
Me too.
It was like
and I tried again against MVP, man. Gary's killing me with this sub
me
bullshit.
too. I had Gary sub by against MVP at 10-1. In round 1, I'm feeling like a genius. I'm like, this is the best bet ever. I knew he was going to expose him, and then he just somehow didn't get it. I think MVP's must be pretty strong to, peel the grips.
He's got some thick neck muscles or something going on, because that thing was all the way in. That was deep. Ian Gary had no excuse.
I was out at the bar, and I actually had a physical ticket for the submission prop, and I was getting it out to show the people I was with, and I was like, there's no way he doesn't get this, right? And then somehow he fought out of it. But
I would have been insufferable, Pepe. If that sub ticket had cashed, I would have ruined MMA Twitter for 2 straight weeks. I would have made such a big deal about it.
and then there's plenty of people who bet Gary sub in previous fights and then didn't bet it this time. They'd be so pissed.
Yep.
So Morales submission seems too short, honestly. 5-1. I mean, he's got one career submission. He's more of KO or decision, I think, in this spot. I don't know if there's anything that I really like. GTD's minus 160. I think maybe Morales is probably due for a KO, right? Magny is pretty fragile these days. He's getting up there in age. He hates leg kicks.
That's the truth.
If Morales is throwing leg kicks, throwing and landing leg kicks, I mean, even Griffin dropped Magny in round 1 and couldn't get him out of there. Now he's just another year older. I know people are saying there's not as many KOs with the gloves, so maybe more people bet decision. I'm kind of leaning KO, but I haven't fully made up my mind. I'm going to look at a few more things before. But I think Morales is probably solid. I don't really see Magny winning here.
Okay. I'm right there with you. I don't think that Magny's going to pull another massive come from behind. It seems like he got his one pass in the last fight, and that was mostly because Malak cardio death. I don't think that's going to happen in this spot. So I don't think he's going to have that spring it from behind type of victory, but he's done it a couple of times. You never know.
Like you said, he's easy to take down, and Morales is so physical that he should be able to take him down whenever he wants. So
he can buy time, right?
He's always
gonna get on top.
He's always gonna have that in his back pocket. If he tires down, just take him down. So I think it's a tough fight for Neil.
Absolutely, completely agree. 8-1. Maybe a little big. Anytime it's a fist fight, maybe a little big, but it's definitely.
I'm not laying the juice. I'll say that. I don't like laying that much juice unless it's a squash match, and this is not a squash match.
This is a damn Bellator card, man. It seems like Parlay City, and then one of these is going to ruin it, and it's just sniffing out which one is going to be the bed shitter this week.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We've got just a couple of fights left to talk about here. This, by the way, everybody, if you weren't aware, is going to be the Ultimate Fighter finale. Pepe, I must confess, I usually watch The Ultimate Fighter. I haven't watched a single episode of this one. When I was young and I was getting all excited about MMA, The Ultimate Fighter actually is what caught the bug for me. The reason I was such a big fan of Ryan Bader's is I watched that season of The Ultimate Fighter live, and it really hooked me. My wife and I, we used to go play volleyball with our friends, and then I had to rush home because right when we got done playing ball, that was when Tough came on, back when it was on Spike TV. So I know all about The Ultimate Fighter. I'm an old school degenerate with some Tough, but I am out of the loop for this one, unfortunately.
I think the reason why a lot of people don't like it as much is because they haven't changed the show at all. It's just like the same format that they use. They haven't been innovative whatsoever.
Not even
when McGregor was on the show, it's like whatever. And on top of that, we love betting on the fights, and you can't bet on them. So I've seen a few episodes, but I haven't been super into it lately either.
Yeah, it's tough scenes, man, especially because I came up with it. That's what I love looking out for. But Justin, love you. Keep it out of the chat, man. We don't do anything like that. This is a fight show. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. No politics in my chat. No racism, sexism, hate speech, politics, and no spamming. Those are the only rules. But let's get back to the fights here on this one, man. Ryan Loder, 6-1, 33 years old. He's taking on Rob Zilla, which, by the way, might just be the best new MMA name in the game. 10-3. Rob is another one of these fighters that you guys actually can find. Shout out Spectation Sports. He fought on Aries FC as well, so you can find some of his tape on that platform also. And Pepe, I am really going to have to lean on you here on this one because I didn't get much of a chance to do a whole lot of tape. Rob is a guy that I kind of know, like I said, because I've seen some of his fights through Spectation Sports. I looked up Ryan. He was a former D1 wrestler, but not like a really good one. You know, it's like you went to the Olympics versus you've got a medal at the Olympics. That kind of D1 wrestler. He's 33 years old, which is way too old to be a prospect, which is way too old to be really getting into the UFC unless you're a Pereira where you've got, you know, just world-class skills in another element or something like that. I didn't like what I saw from Loder when he fought Luan Davis, I want to say. He was getting tagged up in that fight and just firing desperation takedowns. He looks so uncomfortable on the feet. I need to go back and watch this season of Tough because I don't know if he's maybe patched that hole up in his last couple of fights. So I do need to go watch that and check it out and see how he looks these days. But Loder really just seems like a wrestler with no second gear. Yeah, with no second plan. And he gets hurt on the feet, and I think that'll catch up to him, especially at the age that he is. Rob Zilla obviously is going to have a striking advantage. He's got decent power. He's got an opportunistic submission game. I worry about him, you know, maybe getting taken down and accepting bottom in this kind of a spot. You do worry a little bit about that. But on the feet, he's going to have a big-time advantage in this spot. I kind of lean towards Rob, but again, I don't have a good read on this one, guys. I will pick Rob for the sake of the show, for the sake of giving you guys my opinion. But this is not something that I'm confident in. I need to do a little bit more legwork. Pepe, can you help me out? What are we doing here on this one?
Yeah, if you go back and you do watch any of the episodes of this Ultimate Fighter, watch the first episode that Rob is featured in. It's a really solid episode. You get his backstory, and it shows some of his fights. I was familiar with him before he came on the Contenders, or before he came on the Ultimate Fighter, because he was on Aries, and I like to bet Aries. Who did he fight? He fought Pietro Panini, and he won
twice with Pietro, right?
Huh?
Didn't he go twice with Pietro?
Yeah, because there was a no contest the first time, and then Panini wanted out. Rob made it a war, and Panini was like, no more, but there was like an illegal elbow, so it was a no contest. They rematched the fight, and Rob won by first round submission. He's improving quite a bit. He was also on Aries, and he fought this really solid Russian-French guy, Ahmed Salamov. And in that fight, he showed that his takedown defense isn't the greatest. He can kind of get stuck on bottom, but he does work his way up. And he's just a violent guy. He's very good on the feet. He's got a lot of power. He's going to be the much better striker in this matchup. He's comfortable in the fire. You love to see that when you're backing someone. So I think Robert is going to win this fight. But yeah, I would urge anyone who didn't watch it to watch his episode because he's got a really cool backstory. He talks about his tattoos. He's got like the Nordic tattoos, symbols all over him. And he's a super fun fighter. I really hope he wins. He's going to be an awesome addition to the UFC. Cool. I think that's someone that they would like build slow, like we were talking about. And because he's got a lot of marketing.
He's got a personality.
Upside. Yeah. A lot of personality. He's a super fun fighter. He's a good looking guy. He's still relatively young. Meanwhile, Loder is kind of a boring wrestling guy who Rob's only 29 and Loder's already in his early 30s. So he's the younger guy too. You can see he's improving a ton. Got a ton of power in his hands. Dangerous submission artist. Yeah, Ryan's 33. So yeah. I like Rob in this spot.
I'm seeing -155.
Yeah,
and that seems playable.
I think maybe people are thinking that Loder can get takedowns and get wrestling upside. You know, like I said, Rob was taken down a bunch of times in his one Aries fight, but he works his way back up. He's always hunting submissions. He's always throwing elbows. There's always a lot of blood in his fights. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not interested in the dog.
Okay. Fair enough. And Nigel getting a little upset at me about my my bad D1 wrestler comment there. Nigel, you got to understand, man. First and foremost, I could wrestle my way out of a paper bag. That's where I started, actually. I'm a grappler before anything, so I do know what I'm doing. Believe it or not, on the wrestling mat. I'm not sure how or why I offended you so greatly in this spot, but you know what I'm saying. I'm talking about MMA. I'm talking about fights. This guy gets bopped up on the feet and shoots desperation takedowns. He might get them and survive, but that doesn't impress me on the regional scene at 33 years old. When you get to the UFC, if you get hit on the chin and you're diving on ankles, you're going to get put to sleep. We're talking about betting a guy in the UFC and his wrestling is not going to hold up in the UFC if that's the only skill set that he's got going. And Nigel, my friend, you should know that by now. So again, I don't know if this guy's your cousin. Are you related to him in some way? I'm sorry I offended you, but I have no problem saying that I don't have high expectations for him here in this spot. So that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not like he was like some standout wrestler, so I don't really understand.
He was D1. That was great.
Yeah.
I'm not D1. I'm not complaining. He'll stick me on my head. No problem. But
yeah, you're also not fighting Robert Valentin, so
exactly. I am not getting in there with Robzilla.
Yeah.
All right, guys. What we believe to be your co-main event for UFC Vegas 96, Angie Hill taking on Tabatha Ricci. And man, I've just been rewarded again, Pepe. Angie is one of my mangy underdogs. Angie is one of my spark fighters. I have always been big on Angie. And for a long time, for several years, I've been telling people, I go, she's old and she's getting better. Nobody does that. You know, these fighters, they get to 34 years old and that's it. That's their final version. They're capped off. They're done. Angie is a late bloomer. She got to the sport late. She really didn't get started until she was much, much older. So she's a young 39, if you can say it that way. And she does seem to be adding new wrinkles to her game. Hell, she just cashed a submission prop for you, unless I'm mistaken, very recently.
Yeah, and both of us.
Yeah, I tailed on that. I felt very good about that. Thank you. So yeah, man, she is a tough son of a bitch. She's got more of a chin on her than I think I've ever seen. I always have to give her props for the nuclear missile that she took from Amanda Lemos that would have put out anybody else on the planet. And she just kept on coming forward. Her Muay Thai is nasty. Her wrestling has improved greatly. Her offensive submission game has also improved. She did get a little bit of a break in competition, and I will readily admit that. You know, when you go back down to facing Denise Gomes, who's up and coming, the UFC obviously trying to do a little something there. Luana Pinheiro. These are not the Mackenzie Derns or the Verna Janjidovas or the Amanda Lemos of the division anymore. So she is definitely still gatekeeper status, but she's winning those fights handily. And she's giving these contenders the fight of their lives. She's going to split decisions almost every damn time. Tabatha Ricci, 10-2. She's 29 years old. There is a 10-year age gap here. She is now getting back to it full swing after taking a break, having the baby. She won a split decision against
she didn't have a baby.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm mixing up her and Tisha in her last fight there. I'm mixing up my ladies there. Back-to-back split decisions, though. Lupi Godinez, Tisha Pennington, split decision. I mean, they call her sorry, this is Baby Shark, not Tiny Tornado. Yeah. God, I mixed these two up big. Those are they not the same fighter though? Can we just there's like these random pairs of MMA fighters, like the two Billies. Tisha Torres and Tabatha Ricci are the same person. You can't tell me differently. Strong wrestling, high pace, high cardio. They mix it up really well. It's the same person. It doesn't matter that I'm mixing them up. So I think Angie Hill is gonna do better in the wrestling department. Tabatha can probably still get takedowns. Can she hold her down? I'm not sure. It's going to be volume on the feet. I think Angie will do a good job of keeping Tabatha at the end of her shots, so she'll probably score a little bit of a, she'll have some edge on the feet there. She'll be able to score where Tabatha Ricci can't quite close the range. And Ricci really is a decision fighter. She's another one of these women that just doesn't have power. She has to win the fight over the course of 15 minutes and can't really extend herself from her opponent because there's no pop on the power. There's no submission threat for the most part at this level. So she's got to win a very convincing decision to be able to get the nod. Considering what we know with Angie, this has split decision written all over it, man. Pick your poison, people. I don't care if you want to flip this coin. I'm probably not going to. I lean towards Angie Hill just because of the height, the reach, the improvements that we've seen. But Tabatha is the younger fighter. She will have the grappling advantage, and that could pose to be something dangerous. I'm picking Angie. Probably not betting it. What about you, man?
Yeah, it's a really intriguing fight. And so you got Ricci, who's 10 years younger. She's only 29. And she like you said, Hill is improving. I've noticed her improvements. I think everyone notices them now after the Pinheiro fight, but she had been improving for a bit.
Yeah, steadily.
I had the submission round 2 and round 3 in her last fight against Luana. And that's because Luana is a bad submission grappler and that she slows down quite a bit. Now, if you look back at Angela's last 2 fights, she's fought 2 Brazilians now. They're giving her a Brazilian again. So she fought 2 gassy Brazilians who, slow down quite a bit as the fight wears on. I think Tabatha's got better cardio, so I don't think she'll be facing that dynamic. Angela, she's orthodox, good Muay Thai fighter. Her problem is she lacks physicality. She's not as weak as she used to be, but she's still pretty weak in the hips. Great cardio, great volume, good pace. Her grappling has come a long way. Her takedown defense is improving. It used to be really, really bad, and she would lose all of her fights because she would get taken down, but she is improving that quite a bit. She's got a really good jab. And she's very good. She's not very good, but she's pretty good in the clinch with her clinch elbows and her knees. Pretty crafty at cutting off the cage and decent kicks at measuring distance. So Ricci, the thing with her is she's been dating Callum Welsh, the boxer that Dana White has taken a huge interest in. The UFC is actually putting on a boxing event in Ireland in September, and Callum Walsh is the main event. And he is being pushed big time by the UFC. And him and Tabatha have been dating, I think, about a year now. And you can kind of tell in her fights now that her boxing is slowly improving because now she's training with some of Callum's people. She's getting her boxing together, and you can see that her head movement is a lot better. She seems more comfortable on the feet. She's throwing a little more volume, not as stationary as she used to be. Now, I bet I was huge on Lupi Godinez against Tabatha Ricci, and I bet Jillian Robertson against Ricci because I saw the holes in her game with the striking. But after those fights, I mean, I would still happy betting those fighters, but I rate Robertson and Godinez quite a bit. I rate them over Hill. Despite Hill having a win over Lupi, that fight was on short notice and she was hurt. Lupi just takes fights no matter what.
Yeah.
If it's not good circumstances, she just likes to fight. And, it doesn't work out for her in the long run with wins and losses, but she's just a natural fighter.
Doesn't seem to bother her one bit.
No. But her boxing is super good and her takedown defense is really solid. So that's the thing I want to talk about in this matchup is that Lupi and Tisha Pennington both have really strong hips and are very difficult to wrestle. Now, if you go back and think about the Mackenzie Dern fight against Tisha, Mackenzie wasn't able to get a takedown at all that fight. Tisha has very good in and out movement. She's very fast. It's hard to get on her hips. And she's has a low center of gravity and she's thick. So she's just tougher to wrestle. And you think about Mackenzie Dern against Angela Hill. She was able to get multiple takedowns throughout that fight. she actually rocked Hill a few different times in that fight. She put a damn beating on Angela Hill in round 3. She was able to mount her and just rain down a heavy ground and pound. And now Hill, approaching 40 years old, she's taking a lot of damage. And I do know that she's improving, and I could see why people are leaning towards the Hill side for this fight. But I actually do think that Ricci is going to be able to get her down at some point. I like the improvements that I've seen from her. I think Hill's going to be able to give her some problems, so it could potentially be a super close fight, but I honestly think Ricci is going to be able to pull this one out, and Baby Shark is going to be in the win column. I think people are going to, see that Hill won 2 in a row, and she's going to win again, and Ricci didn't look great in her last fight. You could easily make a good case that Pennington won that fight. I think most people thought Tisha Pennington won that fight, but Tisha beat the hell out of Angie when they fought. It wasn't even that close. I think Ricci, with the improvements that she's making, her physicality, her cardio, she's not going to wilt like D. Gomes or Pinheiro. She's very tough. She can tank damage. She's got good cardio. She's got good volume. She attempts a ton of takedowns. I think with those improvements, I think the upside is with her in this matchup, but I haven't made a play on it yet.
Okay. Hey, I can absolutely understand it. And if you want to give me the argument of the younger improving fighter, I love Angie Hill. And we talked about how she's improving, but you're going to be improving at a much faster rate when you're younger like that. And the physicality difference, Ricci's already got that in the bag. At 29 years old, she doesn't have to worry about it. So the improvements in the other areas should be coming quicker. I don't hate it, man. I actually haven't bet Hill specifically because of recency bias. I looked at this and I went, now Hill is no longer a secret. Secret's out. She's won a couple fights in a row. She's looked real impressive. People are going to give her the credit they weren't giving her just a couple of years ago. And because of that, I might be falling into this, hey, Hill's looked really good recently. And then we see a new wrinkle from Ricci.
Yeah, Google Calum Walsh UFC boxing event in Ireland. There's actually a page on the UFC website where they're talking about it. And Dana White has these quotes about how he's really invested in this kid and he really loves this kid. So I could see Calum Walsh being at the Apex event, front row or whatever. Camera goes to him, and it just I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but they're starting selling tickets for that event this week. So it's kind of coincidental, we'll say.
Lines up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, that's definitely a good thing to know. I got to shout out my guy Razor Sharp Picks in the chat. You guys know I'm only shouting out people who I know and trust and love and are proven long-term winners. Razor Sharp is my baseball guy. Razor Sharp is picking up MMA. We might have to get him on the pod one of these days if he keeps on winning in MMA. But he's giving out winners all the damn time. Razor is definitely a guy that I subscribe to. And I would suggest if you like money, if you like gambling on other stuff and just suck at it the way I do, Razor's definitely a guy that can help pick up the slack there for you. So slight dissension here from me and Pepe. We've got Hill versus Ricci. He's kind of talking me out of my Hill side, but I wasn't overly confident to begin with. Like I said, split decision written all over it.
That's the thing, man. It's minus 500 to go to decision, and the judges are being so inconsistent these days that it's hard to feel good about putting your money on either of them, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those fights where both fighters have a 30-27 scorecard. They've been doing that a lot lately. It's
bro got literally removed from the arena.
But we see it a lot. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the guy trying to get me my Taito Avasa ticket cashed. I was hoping to get a greasy, disgusting split decision, serious home cooking. You can remove him after my ticket has been cashed, please. Thank you. But in all reality, I love that the UFC took such a drastic approach to that. They were like, the judging, the officiating, it's been awful, horrendous. There's nothing we can do about it. Now they're like, nah, bro, get him the fuck out of here. They're like, remove him from the building, like now. Thank you, please.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of corruption in judging, or they're just terrible. Like, it's not even the optimal position to be judging a fight is right cage side right there. They should be in
Right.
a separate room, getting to see it from all angles. Like, it doesn't make sense how they do it. Like, they're stuck in like the early 1900s still. Like, it's ridiculous.
And their view is so different from what everybody else sees that it's like, no shit, their scorecards are different from ours. They're literally watching the fight from a different point of opinion. Rough, man, rough scenes. And Pepe, I really used to be the guy that was like beating the drum. That's like, they're not corrupt. They're just bad. I'm starting to think they're corrupt as fuck. Like, especially the Tai Tuivasa one. Like, that guy got paid. That guy got paid. He was hoping the fight was close enough to get robbed, and he had 30-27s filled out before the opening bell rang. It's getting ugly. So the UFC's got to do something about it. They better get this shit fixed.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, guys, main event time. Do me a favor, if you haven't yet, hit the like button for us. Make sure you follow my guy, Pepe. We got one more fight to talk about with you. Jared Cannonier takes on Caio Borralho in the main event for this one, man. And it is just lambs to the slaughter yet again. This fight card has a theme, and that's putting old people down. Man, Jared Cannonier has not looked the same in his last couple fights. He's been old for a long time, and he's been holding off Father Time. I always say Father Time is the only undefeated fighter out there. And Jared Cannonier was trying to make a run for it. He was going Randy Couture on us, but he's 40 and it's starting to look like it. His fight against Nasruddin Imavov, I mean, I thought Jared was going to be the one getting a late finish. Nasruddin's had some questionable cardio in the past, and I thought maybe Jared would be the guy to expose it. He got rocked badly by Marvin Vettori, and I probably don't need to tell you that if you're getting rocked by Marvin Vettori, your chin probably isn't doing too great. That was a bad sign in that fight. Even though Vettori is still, potentially getting better, it's still a bad look to get hurt by him in that kind of a spot. So I really think that Jared Cannonier, for all his greatness, for the amazing run he went on, for this massive resurgence in his life, I think he's headed the wrong way, and I think he's headed that way fast. And I think the UFC knows that. Caio Borralho, 16-1, dude's 31 years old. He's in his prime, captain of the Fighting Nerds. They are taking over. I've made the mistake of not jumping on the Fighting Nerds train fast enough. I wasn't sold on Carlos Prates. He looked like $1 million and was the first guy to KO the Leech last week. I can't go against Caio here, man. I know a lot of people are going to be on the Caio train. He's a 2-1 favorite. He's in that parlay buster price tag range. It's going to be everybody on Caio. Jared's probably going to come out and give himself a real good accounting. We're in the small cage. That could factor. But I think Caio's going to just be too quick. Too good of footwork. Too good of movement. He'll be able to dance around. He'll be able to kind of pick and poke and score. He got a finish in his last fight. Big knockout over Paul Craig. Paul Craig's chinny as shit. Caio Borralho is going to be a guy who has always kind of point fought, and he's got shit for it. He KO'd a couple of guys. I'm sorry, he KO'd and submitted, one guy that's gassy, one guy that's chinny. I think he goes straight back to his old ways. I think Jared Cannonier's got enough gas in the tank. He'll be able to hang in there. I think it's Caio by decision, man. What about you?
Okay, so what I don't like on the Cannonier side is that he's 40 years old, and it's only been a couple months since he fought Imavov. I don't like that he's not taking more time. It seems like this is kind of was a short notice main event type thing. So, I mean, I could see why people like Caio here. Caio is 31, Cannonier is 40. Caio is 6'1", Cannonier is 5'11", but Cannonier does have the 2.5 inch reach, 2.5 inch reach advantage. Cannonier is a solid striker, though. He hasn't really regressed that much, in my opinion. He's fought the much higher level of competition. Yeah. He's 3-0 in the UFC Apex. I don't know if that matters, just mentioning it. But look at the fighters that Caio has fought in his little run to the rankings. He is one of those guys where the UFC has matched him up perfectly in order to create this new contender. So the UFC does it intentionally. They give people very favorable matchups and slowly allow them to succeed. And so Caio has fought. He was another guy who returned after Contender Series. He had a boring win over Aaron Jeffrey. They brought
two-timer.
Yeah, they brought an absolute bum can and Jesse Murray, who's terrible, and to allow him to get a finish. So he was fed Murray. Then he fought the fraudulent Russian Gadzi Amargirdzev or whatever. Then he fought a kickboxer who can't grapple. Then he fought Murdov, and the Murdov fight was not a good look, in my opinion.
I will die on the hill that Murdov won that fight.
Yeah, you could definitely make the case that Murdov won that fight. And Murdov's not really known for his grappling or anything or being that special of a fighter. And Murdov swept him and reversed him multiple times. Caio didn't really show a ton of urgency to get back up when he was on bottom in a couple spots. Didn't really stand out on the feet that much. Ended up grinding a very close decision victory where he was a big favorite, and he did not look good in that spot. Then he gets Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, who has no grappling whatsoever. And Mikhail was actually tagging him a bit in round one. It was a pretty close striking fight. And then
Pepe,
round two.
Are you gonna talk me into a kill a gorilla bet this weekend?
Round two, he gets Mikhail because Mikhail has no grappling and he's able to submit him. Then he fights the fraud in Abus Magomedov. Yep. And the guy couldn't even finish him. Abus is having success in round one, and it's a fairly close fight. Then Abus death gasses, doesn't have cardio to go 15 on the feet, and Caio couldn't even finish him. He should have been able to finish Abus for sure. And then they fed Paul Craig to him, and he did what he had to do. He disposed of Paul Craig. His striking looked solid in that fight. So Caio hasn't lost since 2015. He's coming from a very, very good camp in the Fighting Nerds. Hasn't fought the greatest level of competition. He's a southpaw, in and out style. He blitzes forward. But if you look back through his UFC run, he's never landed more than 68 significant strikes in a fight. Has never gone 5 rounds. He's a bit tentative on the feet. He can really hold back quite a bit when you're throwing volume at him. He's well-rounded, decent kicks. He's improving. He's got pretty good power in his hands and his kicks. Happy to take the back foot and circle around to avoid power, likes to avoid exchanges, and he's pretty weak off of his back. Now, Cannonier, in his last 2 fights against Southpaw, he has won those fights. Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori. I think Vettori was like one of his best performances of his career. I think Dan from Half the Battle is giving me shit because I picked Vettori to beat Cannonier. But I stayed on that train and I picked Imavov to beat Cannonier in the next fight. So I got one back against Cannonier. And I was big on Cannonier against Brunson. But I thought Cannonier looked solid against Imavov. He was very competitive with Imavov, and I rate Imavov as a much better striker than Caio. I think Cannonier can actually give Caio some issues in this fight. What I don't like is that he's 40 and he's coming off a 4-round fight against one of the best strikers in the division where he was stopped. I will say it was a soft stoppage. You can make a case where he looked like he was fighting through it, but Cannonier gets rocked in a lot of fights. Even Marvin Vettori had him rocked in round 1. Derek Brunson had him rocked in round 1. But generally, he gets his equilibrium unbalanced and he can fight through it. You don't really see him getting, one-punch knockout. But you don't like to see that as he's approaching 40 years old, and it's only been a couple months since his last fight where he took a lot of damage. It was a high-paced fight. So Cannonier, orthodox, but he still has speed. Even though he's 40 years old, he still has solid speed. He's a shorter guy, but his jab is long. He's got a long reach, and he's very good with his jab. He's got power in both hands. He's got really good hooks, very good leg kicks. Will take the front foot. So the way I'm envisioning the fight is Cannonier taking the center and Caio circling away and, trying to touch and circle away, kick, power, try to touch Cannonier's chin. I think he can do that. There's a potential he rocks him. I don't really know how the grappling is going to go because Caio doesn't have the best offensive wrestling, honestly, and Cannonier is pretty solid. once he's taken down, he usually gets back up really quick. Imavov is a pretty solid control grappler. Like he dominated Buckley when he grappled. He's a very strong guy on top, and he couldn't get anything going against Cannonier. Anytime he, hossed him down, Cannonier was right back up. So you like to see that. He dealt really well with Vettori and Southpaw. His cardio and volume looked amazing in that fight. He was landing some bombs. And he even beat Strickland recently, who is one of the best middleweights in the entire division. So that win is aging really well. And the reason why he was able to deter the volume from Strickland was because he lands so powerful. The power is what deters the fighters from getting a lot of volume off. So I don't really see how Caio is really going to cover this number unless he somehow sparks him early. But I know Caio has good cardio. I don't know. I think the line is wide, honestly. Cannonier's boxing is really good, man. He's very accurate. He hasn't really seemed like he's really lost a step in these fights. So I don't know. I like how Cannonier is able to fight against southpaws. I like that look for him quite a bit.
Pepe, I gotta interrupt you real quick. Yeah. Just one sec. Mushroom, I know you're still there and you can hear me. I hit the wrong button. I didn't mean to ban you. I just banned Mushroom.
No, not Mushroom.
I'm gonna have to get with the Homo Fight team and get that fixed, Mushroom.
Yo, that's funny because it says Mushroom was banned.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Pepe. Oh my God.
No worries. No worries.
Go ahead, pick back up. I needed to let him know before he like rage quit and ran off that I didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah. So all in all, man, if Cannonier doesn't get bonked, if he's not over the hill, these are the kind of spots where sometimes I went into tape going, please don't let me see value on Cannonier because it's like, and I might not even bet it, even though I'm picking him to win outright, just because these fighters who are a lot older fighting the younger guys are losing at such a high clip that even though stylistically, I think it's a bad matchup for Caio, I think Cannonier should beat him. I think he should be like minus 125 or so. Mm-hmm. With the improvements Caio is making, who knows what kind of steroids he's on. Cannonier being 40, coming off all that damage, being rocked in multiple fights. It might be enough to just keep me off entirely. But I'm going to pick Cannonier to spring the upset. I think it'll be an unpopular pick.
I don't mind it, man. I don't mind it at all. That's one of those ones that as you're speaking through the things, the notes, it's all kind of crashing down in my head. You know what I mean? Because I have made the argument for Cannonier many, many times, and I'm also kind of falling into that recency bias trap this week because I bet Cannonier against Imavov. He's a guy that I've been high on. He's a guy that I've done well, betting on in the past. So I'm right there with you. I totally understand. I can see the argument. I have bet against Caio. I have, scored a fight against Caio that I think he undeservedly got his hand raised for. So I can see everything you're talking about. The pieces are falling into place. I like it. I really do. Might want to listen to an interview or two before I make any kind of a move on this one because I am concerned about the durability and age of Jared Cannonier, but he is a guy that just never quite seems to all the way affect. And I don't think that Caio hits anywhere near as hard as someone like Imavov does, just generally speaking. So yeah, the damage and durability is adding up for certain, but is he still going to be able to, put him away or make it count? I'm not sure. So I'm going to have to tentatively put a pin in my pick. And some of you guys in the chat might be wondering, I got shit for this a couple weeks ago. Who's the dog of the week? I don't have one this week right now. I've got several fighters that I'm interested in, but this is such a sketchy ass card. I'm not sure who that's going to be just yet. For a hot second, I actually thought about making it Victoria Leonardo, but I was like, no, I don't want to just burn money doing that shit. we're looking at what? Jose Medina might be a scrappy comeback underdog. Gerald Meerschaert always is live in his fights. He might be a comeback underdog. If Llontop is in shape, makes weight, has a size advantage, maybe, but I still like Slava with the striking in that spot. I'm gonna have to look at the Ultimate Fighter guys, but I'm picking Rob Zilla. He's a favorite too, so it scares me because
Is
I'm
there
picking
another Ultimate Fighter fight?
There should be one more.
Yeah. I think there's going to be another one. So me and Clint were talking before air. We're like, sometimes it's better to wait until weigh-ins to see what kind of shape these guys are in, because we see all the time there's always some fuckery going on the scales. People don't come in as good of shape as you expect, or there's a big weight miss and enough to make you want to avoid the fight. So sometimes it's better, even though it's, cool to get the early beta and get some CLV, sometimes it's better just to get maximum information and just wait until the weigh-ins and see how they size up.
Yes, sir. That's the way to do it. All right. Well, guys, there you have it. Oh, and Magny. Magny was another one that I was like, I go to war with Magny so often. Maybe he fits. But
it seems like a juice card, doesn't it?
It's a juice card, but it's a greasy one, man. You know what? I'm so frustrated with myself because at UFC 305, I said dogs barking. I was like, everyone's ready for the chalk to roll, and this is dog week, man. And I picked the wrong dogs. Yeah, I got a couple of them. You know what I mean? But there were so many dogs.
At least you got Drickus and Casey O'Neill, and Casey O'Neill looked minus 500 in that fight.
Oh, that was beautiful. But I mean, there were even more dogs that, like, the first fight of the night, man, Aguilar hits his win condition. He hits the jumping guillotine all of a sudden. That's the only way he wins that fight, but he did it. There's a lot of stuff like that.
The Urseg fight, I mean, who's to say that, like, he's going to land a KO shot every time they fight? Like, that could have been a lucky KO, honestly.
Ursig looked so good until he got caught. That was like a classic Kai Kara come from behind nuke spot. So, I feel vindicated that all the dogs were barking, even though I didn't cash on all of them. But that makes me scared for this fight because now I'm thinking chalk. And it's like, man, if I'm like, everything is chalk on this super low level card, the narrative is here. They want these people to win. It's obvious. It's apparent. Somebody still shits the bed. So I'm not sure who the dog of the week is this week, guys. I will be taking a look into it and seeing what we can find. I'll post it on socials, of course, if I get to one. This would be the first week ever in 2024 since I started doing the Link Memorial Dog of the Week. If I didn't pick a dog to bet on, it'd be the first. I did one time where I was scared and I let the chat pick a dog and they lost. So
yeah, never leave it to the chat.
I'm not leaving it to the chat this time.
Well, maybe it's still early in the week. Maybe at some point either Hill or Ricci becomes an underdog and you can, take a spot, because it's still early. Maybe the lines are still going to move. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll figure it out throughout the week. Maybe we pass this week because it's so gross. But I do like a lot of chalk this week, unfortunately. I hope you all have a wonderful week. That was the UFC Vegas 96 breakdown, everybody. Do me a favor and hit the like button on your way out if you will. Make sure you're supporting our guy Pepe. And Pepe, if you've got anything you want to share, if you're doing other content or shows or anything like that, feel free, man. Floor is yours. Let them know where they can support you.
Yeah, you can support me. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to Fight Numbers. This week, I'm only doing your show, and I'm doing some private shows on Fight Numbers. Just going over the slate, some look-ahead stuff, and a slate review. Other than that, I don't think I'm going to be on any other shows. Clint, thanks for having me on. Good luck to us this weekend. Hopefully, Cavalcanti comes through in a big way, and hopefully some other spots end up coming available. Maybe we can hit some nice props too.
Yes, sir. That is the plan. Thank you again, Pepe, for coming on. Appreciate you, man. Chat, appreciate you guys. Let's make some money this week. Good luck on Dana White's Contender Series. Now I got to go do some research for that to see if I can degen out and donate there as well. Good night, everybody. Let's roll.